Welcome to Concept Craft. We are presenting step-by-step videos training to crack your certification exam, so you can gain the confidence to take on any accounting challenge. Now let's begin our today's lesson.
Class tracking. Learning outcomes. In this lesson, we'll cover using class tracking in QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. Topics: how class tracking works, setting up classes, using class tracking, running reports by class, reclassifying transactions categorized by class, the missing piece in reports. Running a report is a great way to get a clear picture of the company's financial health. However, clients might want to see a more detailed breakdown of the different segments of their business. Your client might export a transaction detail report into a spreadsheet to analyze the data further, but that's not the most efficient way to get the detail they need. How can you and QuickBooks Online help? With class tracking, clients can easily categorize income and expense transactions from different business sectors, giving them instant insight into their company's financial health. Class tracking is available in QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. How class tracking works. Like other categorization options, classes allow users to customize QuickBooks Online to meet their needs. Select each question to learn more about class tracking. How does class tracking work? When class tracking is turned on, clients can create classes and assign them to most transactions. This allows them to run reports to assess the revenues, costs, and profitability of different activities. Clients can also assign classes to products and services, making it easier to fill out forms. For example, a construction company might create a class for each area of business, such as residential or commercial work. This allows the client to create reports at the end of the accounting period to see whether residential or commercial work is more profitable. Assigned classes are defaults, but can easily be changed if needed. Note that classes only affect the targets of the transactions, not sources. What if the client wants a more detailed level of reporting? With class tracking enabled, you can create subclasses and assign them to parent classes. You can then drill down to see which activities in each class are profitable and which aren't. Let's consider that construction company client again. Once they set up classes for each of their areas of business, residential, commercial, and so on, they can set up subclasses for the various services they provide. The client can now see which activities are more, or less, profitable in each area of their business. Another example is a nonprofit organization. They can then easily see how much they make on each fundraiser and their total fundraising. Note: remind your clients to use unique subclass names for similar activities under each parent class. That's why the subclasses in the example above all start with CO or RO as appropriate. Otherwise, QuickBooks Online may not track the activity to the correct parent class, and your client's reports won't be accurate. Can the client add more levels of subclasses? For each class, you can add up to 4 levels, tiers, of subclass. So each class is limited to 5 hierarchical levels, including the top level, parent class. That said, clients can create as many classes and subclasses they want at each level. However, clients with QuickBooks Online Plus subscription levels need to bear in mind that they can only have 40 classes and locations combined, including subclasses. Clients can use each level of class and subclass for one purpose only. So, if a retail business is using the top, parent, level class to categorize office supplies, they shouldn't use the same level for subcategories such as computer peripherals. The best solution, in this case, would be to add a computer peripherals subclass under the office supplies. What if the client wants to track transactions by unrelated categories? A client who uses classes to categorize different lines of business may also want to track transactions by physical location. In this case, they could add lines of business as parent classes and physical locations as subclasses, or vice versa. However, it would be better for them to use another advanced categorization method. In this example, they might find it more effective to activate the location feature. You can learn about this in the location tracking lesson. Can transactions be reclassified once they are assigned to a class? Yes. In fact, one advantage of using class tracking is that you can batch assign or change classes using QuickBooks Online Accountant's Reclassify Transactions tool. We'll look at it later in the lesson. Pro Advisor Tip: think carefully about the class structure and how it might develop or expand with the business. Also, bear in mind that having too many classes or levels of classes can make a report difficult to read. Setting up classes. Let's see how you can enable class tracking for your client. While it might take some time to set up, it pays off in the long run. Let's start by enabling class tracking. Select the gear icon and then Account and Settings. Select the Advanced tab on the left. In the Categories section, use the Track Classes slider to enable class tracking. Turning on class tracking brings up an action to activate a warn me when a transaction isn't assigned a class feature. When there are unclassified transactions, you or your client don't know if that represents a mistake or if it means the transaction needs to be split among multiple classes at a later date. So it's best to turn this feature on. Note that you can't change the label, class, in QuickBooks Online. Now choose whether your client wants to assign the class to the entire transaction or each row in the transaction. In this case, select one to each row in transaction. Next, select Save and then Done. That's it. Class tracking is now enabled. Now let's add some classes. To do this, select the gear icon and then All Lists. Select Classes. Note that this option is only visible after class tracking has been turned on. In the Classes menu, select New. In the pop-up, enter the name of the class. Then select Save. Next, let's create a subclass. Create a class the same way as before. This time, check the subclass box in the pop-up. From the drop-down, select an existing parent class. Finally, select Save. Back on the main screen, you can see the hierarchy of the main classes and subclasses. Note that you can only have 5 hierarchy levels, including the parent class, in each class. Also, a subclass can only have one parent class. If your client wants several classes to have the same subclass, they have to create a subclass under each parent. That's it. Your client can now track these classes and subclasses using class tracking. Now let's look at how you and your client can use class tracking when adding transactions. We'll use purchasing office supplies as an example. We've set up classes to be assigned to each row in a transaction, and the classes we've entered are departments, such as design and maintenance. So we can now write one check for office supplies and split it among multiple functions, that is, classes. What does this look like on the expenses form? Remember that classes affect only the targets of the transaction, not the source. As you can see below, each line item on the expenses form represents a different target associated with the office supplies expense account and a different class. The transaction source is associated with the checking account, but not with a class. What if you set up classes to assign one class to the entire transaction? In this case, all target lines are assigned to the specified class. This can seem confusing because you are entering the class in the header area, which is typically associated with the source of the transaction. Pro Advisor Tip. Remember, even when you assign one class to an entire transaction, classes are never associated with the source, only with targets. Running reports by class. Now let's look at what information you can get when you run a report by class. Select each of the tabs to find out more about how classes affect the main reports. Profit and loss by class report. Customizing a balance sheet report. Profit and loss by class report. How do you run a profit and loss by class report? There are 2 ways you can do this. With class tracking enabled, open the profit and loss report. From the display columns by drop-down, select Classes. In Reports, go to the Business Overview section to find the profit and loss by class report. What information can you get from a profit and loss by class report? The profit and loss by class report provides a breakdown of income and expense by both class and subclass, as you can see here. Items in the not specified column might reflect unclassified transactions that are causing inaccuracies in the report. If this happens, you may want to identify these transactions and work with your client to classify them properly. Customizing a balance sheet report. There isn't a balance sheet by class report. However, you can customize a balance sheet report to show columns by class by running a standard balance sheet, then from the display columns by drop-down, selecting classes. If you customize a balance sheet like this, it's worth noting the following. QuickBooks Online will report most balances under the not specified class column. This is because classes only affect target accounts, and typically line items post to income or expense accounts. Targets recorded to balance sheet accounts, such as fixed asset purchases or loan repayments, will only show in their class column on the customized balance sheet report if the class was specified. Because the source of the transaction is posted to the not specified class column and the targets are posted to specified class columns, the balance sheet won't balance per class. Remember, it's best practice to turn on the notifications in account and settings to remind you and your clients when a class has not been assigned to a transaction. Reclassifying transactions categorized by class. If clients accidentally attribute the wrong class to a transaction, or they've just set up class tracking and want to assign classes to existing transactions, you can help them with the Reclassify Transactions tool. Note that this tool is only accessible to accountant users or clients with a QuickBooks Online Advanced subscription. Select Accountant Tools, then Reclassify Transactions. Because classes affect the targets of the transactions, you want to select Profit and Loss in the Account Types dropdown. To look at all transactions, select Accrual. Then choose the account with the transactions you want to reclassify and select the dates for which you want to assign classes. Because class tracking is on, selecting the Modify dropdown shows all classes and accounts. Choosing either all or classes generates the same list of transactions, so you can select all. Select Find Transactions to apply these settings. The class column shows you which class is currently assigned to transactions. Now choose the transactions that you want to reassign to a particular class. Then select the Reclassify button at the top. In the Reclassify Transactions pop-up, select the correct class from the Change Class to drop-down and select Apply. What happens next? You can see that the transactions in this account now have the correct class assigned to them. Note that if you need to change both the account and the class, it might be better to filter the transaction list for accounts and change the accounts first, then change the filter to class and assign the class. By reclassifying methodically in stages this way, you can keep track of the changes you're making and are less likely to make a mistake. Summing up. Learning outcomes. Well done. In this lesson, we covered using class tracking in QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced. Knowledge recap. Your clients can use class tracking to categorize their income and expense transactions by different activities or areas of their business. This allows them to run reports to see which activities and areas are most profitable. Clients can get an even more detailed view of their company's financial health by adding levels of subclasses and combining class tracking with location tracking. Next steps. In the next lesson, we'll cover setting up and optimizing location tracking in QuickBooks Online.